Hello, my dear young friends. Today we are going to discuss two major topics: the change of the role of public sector in Indian economy. Also, we would learn what is joint venture and how does this support the business enterprises. So here we go. First, let us take the study on the change of the public sector, especially in respect to the Indian economy. See, during the time of independence, that our economy was shattered by the Britishers. All of you know that our country was under the clutches of the British rule for over 200 years, and the alien rule has put in a lot of difficulties on our economy. As a result, it so happened that we had a lack of these kinds of huge industries, and more of our products were imported from foreign countries, and we had to pay heavy prices for these products. The private sector was not willing to invest on all these high risk end projects because the gestation period would be greater, and the private sector did not want to run the risk of having a longer gestation periods to take back their capital. As a result of which, the government had to intervene into these courses of activity, and the 5-year plans were launched. The initial stages of the development gave a lot of importance to agricultural sector, followed by the industrial sector. And this was the time when the government came forward with its investment into the big, huge projects. And in the post 1990s, it so happened that there were a lot of impetus, encouragement being given to this public sector. So here, the public sector was considered to be the pillars of the nation, and all the major projects were supported by the public sectors: the Rourkela project, the Damodar Valley project, whichever project that you take, whether it is irrigation projects or the industrial projects, and the Singareni, the Neyveli projects, anywhere that you hear of the public sectors gaining utmost significance over the country's development. But as the decades rolled on, post 1990s, it so happened that these public sectors started dwindling over their practices, and it became a burden to the government. And losses after losses, the success of these public sectors became very dull, and the employment was not duly, given over to the success path, meaning that huge losses were sustained by these public sectors. And as a result of which, it so happened that these public sectors had to be revamped. So here, if the public sector has made losses continuously, and these were to be called as SIC units. There was a board that was instituted by the government of India. They called it as Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. And this board was specially constituted for revamping the SIC public sector units. They had to study with the causes for the losses after losses piling up with these kinds of key units. And in case if revival would do, then this BIFR would suggest the measures for the revival. If this revival could not happen, then those SIC units are to be shut down. So various committees were set up to study over the working system of this inefficient public sector units, especially the SIC units. And here the study would be based upon the managerial efficiency as well as the profitability of these public sectors. This was in between, say, 1960s and 70s, and continued post 1990s also. So basically, we understand that the role of public sector before independence was much greater. So they were mainly established for the development of the infrastructure of the country, also to bring in the balanced regional development for our country. These public sectors, so established, enjoyed large-scale economies to scale, and they had, in fact, gained monopoly power over many of these sectors. And they mainly provided a way for the import substitution, meaning that most of the products that we had to import from the other countries, we tried producing in our own country. These public sectors paved a way for Make in India concept during those days itself. But then from 1990s, post 1990s, the role of these public sectors was revamped. Since they started becoming a greater burden to the Indian government and to the Indian economy, and slowly BIFR suggested that all the SIC units has to be closed. It needs to be shut down. And LPG concept was introduced: liberalization, privatization, globalization. So this started getting more and more significance, especially the number of industries that was reserved for the public sector which was actually 17 in number earlier, and this was reduced to 8, and further it is now reduced to 3, meaning that less significance became to public sector. And today only very few atomic energy, arms and communications, mining, and railways are now reserved for the public sector. Most of the areas are open for the private sectors. Disinvestment of shares of a select set of public sector enterprises. What does disinvestment mean? Is selling of the shares by the government units to the private people at large. So here, this involves the equity shares of the public sector, especially the government industries, to be sold to the general private people. So here it so happened that due to privatization in O, this disinvestment led to privatization. Most of the government enterprises became a part of the private sector. And here, all the public sector units were, the list of the public sector units were referred to BIFR, Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. So BIFR would decide the SIC units, and they will organize for the rehabilitation schemes if there is a possibility, otherwise to shut down these SIC units. So here, this would be through memorandum of understanding, that is between the managements, and also this management was to be handed over to many of the private sector people, so that that revamping would happen in a lesser duration of time and more effectively. At the same time, here we also have the introduction of multinational corporations during this time, when public sectors were dwindling in their approach, and when their significance dropped slowly. This liberalization and privatization, globalization, LPG concept led to more and more the establishment of multinational corporations. So here, multinational corporations have become the order of the day. These are giant corporations which have their operations across a number of countries. So these multinational corporations come with varied features. Usually they are established with a huge capital resource, and they will have the involvement of more than a country. It would have advanced technology in place, and many times it would result in technical innovation. New products are being introduced by these MNCs. They have huge geographical area coverage, and they have vivid marketing strategies. Branded products, they brand their products so that across the globe that they will be able to sell their products. And here they will have centralized control. The head offices would be present in major countries, and these multinationals would have monopoly powers. They will have huge variety of products, and they will have the command over the sale of these products across the globe. So this is all about your change of role of the public sector, especially in respect to Indian economy, pre-independence and post-independence. Now we will also, children, go into learning on a topic called joint ventures. What do you mean by joint venture? When two business units agree to join together for a common purpose and mutual benefit. Now this particular coming together of two or more business units gives rise to what we call it as joint venture. So here they would benefit each other by ending up into common practices. So these joint venture companies, they have the best way of doing their own business. And here, for the joint venture in our country or abroad, there are no separate law or constitution which is established separately for the joint ventures. Perhaps this is only the treaty between these companies, that is their understanding between two or more companies. Generally speaking, joint ventures are of two types. One is contractual joint ventures. These are based upon the contracts between the companies, and equity-based joint ventures. Contractual joint venture, CJV, that is how it is being called. And this is a new jointly owned entity. That is, it does not exist already. Two or more units come together freshly to start with an agreement to work together. So here what happens, the ownership is not shared, but only the control aspects are being shared. That is, this part of the production you take care, the marketing part I will do. Likewise, the contract is in respect to the work relationship. We call it as franchisee also. And when it comes to equity joint venture, here it will be jointly owned by two or more enterprises. That is, they are formed in accordance with the practices of ownership itself. So here, the key operative factor in the case of equity-based joint venture will be that there will be two or more enterprises, and they will vary with their ownership, with their partnership or with their practices as such. So here, everything that is including their ownership, liability, all these would vary between the enterprises. So you can give some examples of joint ventures: AVI Oil India Private Limited, Green Gas Limited, Delhi Aviation Fuel Facility Limited. All these could serve as an examples for this joint ventures. Then here is a novel concept, public-private partnership. So here, this is one PPP model we say, which allocates the work between the public and the private enterprises. That is, they will share, both the private and public enterprises would share this work optimally amongst themselves. We call it as PPP. And these actually are by nature the government entities only. It could be ministries, it could be government departments, it could be municipalities, or sometimes even the state-owned enterprises. Now, these private partners, they come into picture due to their proximity over the location part. It could be either the local people or sometimes even the foreign people. The international level organizations also would take part into this PPPs. And mainly this participation would involve the technical or the financial aspects. Could it be managerial aspects also that they share across with the work? Not the ownership here is shared. It is only within respect to the work that it is being shared among both private and public enterprises. So hope this talk would have been purposeful for you. We remember we have learned the change in the role of the public sector, especially in India. And also we have learned a few concepts upon joint venture and the kinds of joint venture. Go through this video once again and see to it that it becomes purposeful for your examination preparation. Thank you very much. Have